Hey folks, Loman02, currently doing a video recording on the Canadian Highlander format. Canadian Highlander is a format that consists of 100 single cards, so all of them are distinct and different. It has a points list. There are no cards that are banned outside of those that involve Manual Dexterity, Ante, and Scheherazade. Otherwise, all vintage legal cards are legal, and there's no conspiracies as well. But in single copies, and the most powerful cards in the history of Magic are also pointed such that you can't just run all of the Moxen or like Time Vault plus Black Lotus, in a deck. So the deck you have in front of you is kind of an interesting one, and this is not a build of my own, but I kind of want to cover it because I played the deck a little bit recently, and kind of gone through and made a few modifications for my own playstyle in the deck, and just things that I felt gave me as a pilot of this deck more advantage. What we have in front of you is a really kind of interesting combination deck. And this is Eggs. So it is essentially an Academy deck, which there are a significant number of Academy decks. There's like Academy Drazi, which is just like a big mana ramp deck that uses artifacts, and Tolarian Academy, this card right here, which is one of the namesakes, and a 1-point card in the deck to make a lot of mana a lot faster than you should be able to, given expected mana presentation for the turn cycle you're on. This deck can ostensibly win turn one, and so can a lot of the other Academy decks. It takes very specific hands, but ideally what your deck's looking to do is just make a gross volume of mana and then, establish an engine to either get access to all of your cards, some of the specific cards, maybe just, there's value draws, to establish, one of many ways that this deck can win. This deck has a lot of ways to win, and I'll kind of cover that. This is actually a pretty diversified deck in regards to what functions the cards fulfill. There is a lot of inner synergy between all of the cards. As there, I think, often has to be in a density-based combo, and a lot of the cards have multimodal purposes. But at the end of the day, the kind of engine of the deck, the key mana engine of the deck is Tolarian Academy. So I'm not going to heavily cover the mana base. I will cover it kind of quickly, but you have all of your non-basics and your basic island here for Path to Exile and or Assassin's Trophy. You have Ancient Tomb, which is double mana producer. I put right here in its own pile. You kind of have the lands like pile for the supporting lands that kind of help out Tolarian Academy. You have Minamo, Deserted Temple, and Tolarian Academy itself. As you can see, we've run a lot of artifacts in this deck, a lot of very, very cheap artifacts. So once you can get access to Tolarian Academy, which will kind of cover how you gain access to it in the tutor pile, you generally speaking are making about 10 turns to 20 turns in advance of the mana you should be making on a given turn cycle. And that's kind of using the standard math of you make one land drop per turn, so by turn 2 I should be making 2 mana, by turn 3 I should be making 3 mana. Given an internal, you're oftentimes going to expect more powerful, more expected mana development per turn cycle than you would in a lot of other formats, but this deck definitely exploits that to the fullest using Academy. You also have all of the artifact lands in this deck, so Ancient Den, Vault of Whispers, Darksteel Citadel, all of them, to help kind of bolster Tolarian Academy. So when you do get it in play, these are just additional kind of free chicken, so to speak. Gives you 2 mana per 1 land drop. The next pile you have here is kind of your interactive / defensive pile. And not all of these, so Zuran Orb's probably the most on the fence, but let me kind of cover the ones that are in here right now that are really kind of defensive cards that are just in here to kind of buy you time and or stop other folks from winning faster than you're able to win. Ensnaring Bridge is just a very good card against the aggressive decks of the format, and one of the interesting things about this specific Academy deck is, well, you have a lot of cards that draw you cards. For the most part, you are essentially playing a game with this deck where you have an increased hand size without actually having the cards in hand, or you don't per se have to have the cards in hand. And that kind of ties back into what is an egg, and I really probably should have covered that first. So these are all the eggs in the deck. These are a lot of kind of weird looking cards that don't really have ostensibly are on the surface powerful effects, but they all, when they come into play, draw you a card, or they can automatically replace themselves, like Sensei's Divining Top. It's 1 mana, you can flip it and draw a card instantly if you'd like to. The rest of them are either literal spell bombs or literal eggs. So the name comes from the original eggs that are right here: the Shadowblood egg, the Sky Cloud egg, and Sungrass egg, and Mossfire egg, and Darkwater egg. But there's a large family of these style of cards. These cost 2 to actually pop, but as soon as you pop these, you draw a card. You also have cards like Conjurer's Bauble, where you sacrifice to put up to 1 card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library and then draw a card. Chromatic Sphere makes mana. We'll kind of cover all of these momentarily, but in general, what eggs do is they come into play and they tend to draw a card, and for a cost can be sacrificed to make mana. So they basically cycle themselves. And some of these actually do have relevant effects. A lot of the spell bombs actually have effects that can be relevant, like this can do 2 damage to any target. Either spell bomb can bounce things. Life Spark spell bomb actually is going to be relevant in one of the games that I will showcase. And if you just want to jump to that, please go down to the comment section and you can jump to the gameplay immediately. Implement of Improvement gains you some life. Sunbeam Spellbomb, life gain. Typically speaking, you're going to be popping these for cards. Mind Stone either makes mana or turns into a card. Prophetic Prism draws, can also filter mana. Kaleidostone, same thing. Ichor Wellspring, same kind of thing going on. Guild Globe, same sort of thing. Elsewhere Flask, yep, 2 mana, draw a card, and has a possibly relevant effect. And then Alchemist Vial. So all of these cards just replace themselves, is kind of the concept. But at the same time, they also, because they replace themselves, they are a way of maintaining hidden information from your opponent, and also having the ability to increase your hand size either incrementally or vastly all at once. They all also kind of help the core engine of the deck, which is to make mana through Tolarian Academy. So basically your hand becomes... is on the board. If your opponent thought it's easier, they're not per se going to have great knowledge of what it is, if it's by turn 4 or 5. They're not going to per se have great knowledge of what you're able to do, because a lot of your actual card draw, a lot of your actual hand is going to be on the board, and it's going to be transmutable into actual literal cards that give you available options inside the hand zone. So that's kind of like the core of the deck, is these eggs right here build up the mana, and they also build up access to your cards, which in a combination deck, obviously the more core pieces you can have that actually are fundamental to the operation of the deck's engine and also winning, the more likely you're going to be to win, right? The more consistent you'll be at winning. And these eggs kind of all do that. They're basically like regenerating a Xerox engine that, when I say Xerox engine, I mean like Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordained.deck. They're replacing all of those blue cards with basically artifact cards that give you a similar variety of flexibility and consistency when you're playing. Now, how the games are going to play out, it's going to change a little bit every time, because all of these eggs do something different. Some of them are more efficient than others. But at the end of the day, because you're running 24 of them, it's essentially 24 cards that replace themselves with something that you may want, or that you definitely do want, given the status of the matchup. And they all work with Academy. So moving back to the defensive components, you have Ensnaring Bridge, which is just going to buy you time against the more aggressive decks, because you're able to play with a lot of your hand put onto the board and transferable back into hand zone at whim. You can oftentimes just play your cards short and just have them on the board and have a 0-card hand, and have, by the end of your opponent's turn, a 7-card hand, and then go into your next turn to win. So Ensnaring Bridge is actually very powerful in this deck, despite it being an Academy deck and like a big mana deck. It doesn't, it's generally going to play its cards to the board. Defense Grid. This deck can have issues against counter magic. One of the things I found with this style of deck is that, depending on the blue mage you're playing against, the counter spell player you're playing against, it really depends on their familiarity with this deck. Because this deck's kind of hard to read in how it is going to operate or how it's going to get to its win, it's hard to really tell what's relevant. And I think after you play this deck a couple times or played against it a couple times, you start to learn what's relevant in the deck. Like cards like... Where are you at, buddy? I'm going to lose it. Like, obviously, Rings of Bright Hearts is a very powerful card. This card right here, Codex Shredder. This card, like, on the surface is kind of a clunky, junky-looking card, but it's actually really powerful in this deck, and in general, probably worth countering. It's just very, very powerful. And there's some obvious ones, like Current Clan Ironworks is just hugely powerful. You generally want to counter something like that. Scrap Trawler is generally something you want to counter. There's actually a lot of stuff that does need to be countered. So having access to a defense grid is going to allow you to basically play the game you're intending on playing. A couple other new cards, or cards that I believe were new to Ben's build of this deck, are Chain of Vapor and Repeal. I think these are great adds. One, they can be used to rebuy effects or rebuy draws if you want to with your own cards. They're not per se dead, just in the deck on its own. But Collector Oof is a real card. If you're not familiar with Collector Oof, it is a 2/2 for green and 1, and it says artifacts have no abilities, which means this whole deck would cease to function. If it hits the board, because you're just playing 1 and 2 mana artifacts that redraw themselves, which means your entire draw engine has been disabled, and most of your win cons are artifacts as well, like Aetherflux Reservoir, Sword of the Meek, Thopter Foundry, Walking Ballista. you name it. So, you do need to have access to answers. I believe he's now playing Gear Per Aether Grid, which is a 2 in red enchantment that says tap 2 artifacts, deal 1 damage to any target, which I do think is actually also a good hedge. I am not running it in this build of eggs, because I kind of want to try out the deck and kind of, honestly just get some experience with the deck, because it's a very cool deck and it's very interesting to me. I don't tend to be a committed combo player, and I'll admit openly, I think combo can kind of get boring, for me at least. What I will say is this: the A plus B combos, I guess is what I mean. The A plus B combos tend to be very boring for me. Like time vaulting someone out, it's lost its luster for me. I just don't enjoy doing it. I'd rather play an interactive game, and or have a more sophisticated puzzle to solve. And I will give eggs this. While I don't generally this is a personal opinion, I don't generally tend to care for the play style of the ramp style Academy decks. I just think it's like if you have a great hand, you flop it on the table and then cast draw 7 and do it again and again until your opponent falls over dead, which is cool. It's very spectacular. To me, it's just not very fun because it's just like your decisions are a little more limited. Whereas a deck like this in 5-color Storm, Tutor Storm, in this format tend to be a little more decision intensive, and they definitely I think benefit you if you practice with the decks a significant bit. Because the lines have, I think, a little more sophistication, and the range of interaction that you have access to is actually a little bit deeper, I think, in general than those other, either like the Turbo Academy decks or like your Time Vault decks. But that all said, you do need to have the ability to interact with things, with creatures, with enchantments, with permanents that are not artifact answers. That's why these 2 cards are in the deck. I think they've been kind of a boon when I've been playing. Welding Jar, this just saves something that you don't want to die on the board, some artifact you don't want to die on the board. I think it's probably a necessary component. Zuran Orb, I put into the Disruption. I don't really think Zuran Orb belongs in the Disruption. It kind of is. It kind of isn't. Like, Zuran Orb could go in a couple different piles. It could also go in this recursion pile over here. I think be just fine. Because really, Zuran Orb has 2 purposes, right? Like, Zuran Orb 1 can just gain you essentially infinite life, or very close to infinite life in this deck. Actually, I believe it can gain you infinite life in this deck. And I have to go through that chain, but it can gain you a lot of life, which means against the aggressive decks, it can buy you time, or it can basically lock them out of the game. But the real reason is it helps set up Second Sunrise and Face Reward. So because you're using Tolarian Academy, and you're going to be tapping a Tolarian Academy in the early parts of the game, one of the interesting things about Second Sunrise and Face Reward is that they'll bring back all of the cards that were put in your graveyard from that turn into play untapped. So you can make mana off Tolarian Academy, play a bunch of artifacts, sack a bunch of artifacts, sack your Academy with the Zuran Orb, sack your Manamo with the Zuran Orb, and then bring all of that stuff back and generally actually make mana. Even though you're spending 4 or 3 to actually have one of these effects, you're actually generating mana, which is kind of one of the things that Zuran Orb does. So I'm not really sure which pile to put it in. Right now I've kind of got it in the Disruption pile, but frankly I think it is more so just kind of an engine piece that kind of goes into this recursion pile over here, but it could be looked at either way. The next pile you have in the deck is the actual mana production, just like pure mana production. So, Cart Clan Ironworks. This card is busted. 4 mana, brick. It says sacrifice an artifact, generate 2 colorless widgets. Why is this good? Well, we're playing Face Reward, we're playing Second Sunrise, we're playing Scrap Trawler. And as you go down this list, you have like Black Lotus and Lion's Eye Diamond. If you're sacrificing these bricks over here, your Mossfire Eggs, your Alchemist Vials, with Cart Clay and Ironworks, you're making 2 mana. If your Lotus or your LED are in the yard, your Scrap Trawler is going to bring one of those 2 back. It's going to make 3 more mana. And then you're going to sack another one of these bricks and make 2 mana, then make 3 more mana off your Lotus, and it just keeps going, right? So it kind of snowballs into this vast mana engine. This card, was banned in Modern for a good reason. It's very busted. I mean, Modern Eggs was a deck, and it used these same cards right here, your Face Reward, your Second Sunrise, and your Trawlers, to really just generate degenerate volumes of value. Now, you may say you only have 1 Face Reward, 1 Second Sunrise. That's not untrue, but I have a significant number of these cards right here, and even just having the ability to convert mana into, or cards that are on board into mana, could allow you to get turbo out like a Tezzeret or a Fabricate, or generate the mana to use the activated ability on Urza there's a Lord, a High Artificer, and oftentimes this can snowball into more and more cards because you get another artifact, you'll sack it for more mana, and sometimes you get just net mana on it. If you have a Sai in play and you put an artifact on the board, it's just, you're obviously not actually you are casting at that point if you're using Urza's ability. It's just, there's a lot of ways to get artifacts out, and oftentimes this card can just allow you to get into loops that are infinite. Or, they are deep enough loops that, not loops, but deep enough value lines, that you eventually get to a point that they become infinite and you just win the game. Because you'll get access to a lot of cards, because mana, snowballing mana tends to, in general, especially in a deck like this where you're set up to transmute it, snowballing mana tends to equate to snowballing card advantage. You can transmute, generally speaking, one into the other if desired, and this deck is set up to exploit the ability to do that pretty well. Next up, you have Basalt Monolith. It's just a 3 mana, make 3 mana. One of the big reasons this card's in the deck is it's one of the less efficient mana producers in the deck, i.e. it costs 3 to put into play, is because we are playing Rings of Brighthearth. Rings of Brighthearth, there's been a couple cards we actually could have probably mentioned that combo out with this so far, but this card, specifically with Basalt Monolith, it goes infinite. So you tap Basalt Monolith to make 3 mana, and then use 2 of that mana to untap the Basalt Monolith. Use 3 of that mana to untap it. There's going to be a trigger off Rings of Brighthearth. If you pay 2 additional off of your, Tolarian Academy mana or whatever, you can untap the Basalt Monolith twice, and this in turn, produces 6 mana for a commitment of 5, which means that you will make infinite mana eventually. It'll be infinite colorless mana, but regardless, infinite mana, which means that you can go to like one of your things like, Walking Ballista and just kill them. You can use an Urza Lord High Artificer to just, basically play your whole deck. If you'd like, you can make infinite copters and gain infinite life off the Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meat combo. You gotta name it. If you have numerous other options available, like if you have a Spellbomb and a Codex Shredder, then you can just continually use infinite mana off of the Basalt Monolith to recurse a Spellbomb to draw a card with Codex Shredder, because Codex Shredder also works with Rings of Brighthearth. So you pay 5, sack this thing, pay 2 more, and you get to bring back, because the Codex Shredder is going to die, it sacrifices, you get to bring back the Codex Shredder with the secondary trigger generated by Rings of Brighthearth, and bring back the Spellbomb, recast both, use the Spellbomb to draw a card, and then just keep going. So if you have infinite mana, in this case, that's all it requires, infinite mana to do it, you can basically draw your whole deck with one egg or one Spellbomb. With the Codex Shredder in combination with Rings of Brighthearth and means of generating infinite mana. Grim Monolith, just a lot of mana for very cheap. Candelabra of Tanos. This card's quite interesting. It also has combinations with Rings of Brighthearth. You can double untap with this in conjunction with cards like... Where are you at, buddy? I think you're here. Voltaic Key. Voltaic Key can untap itself with Rings of Brighthearth, so you can basically use Voltaic Key to untap Candelabra of Tanos to untap Tolarian Academy. And when the Voltaic Key triggers to untap the Candelabra of Tanos, you can copy its triggered ability with Rings of Brighthearth to untap the Voltaic Key itself, which means that you can keep on doing that to infinity to make infinite mana off Tolarian Academy, which is infinite blue mana. So a lot of these cards kind of cycle back to Rings. Rings is one of the engine cards of the deck that allows a lot of the other cards to go from just being good in the deck to being, just game-winning. Mana Vault, one of the pointed cards in the deck, just makes a ton of mana very early, very fast to kind of get you out of the gates. Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, Lotus Petal, Lion's Eye Diamond, Black Lotus, and Lotus Bloom, all quite powerful. Lotus Bloom, probably the least powerful of all these. One of the reasons I think it's still in the deck is, one, it's a good mana burst. 2, you can get it with Tezzeret the Seeker, which is one of the search capabilities the deck has access to. You also have Reshape, which can get it for 2 mana. Wargate, which can get it for 3 mana. Whir, which can get it for 3 mana. Transmute, which can get it for basically 2 mana. You have a lot of ways to find this. So if you need a quick burst of colored mana, this is a card that can do it. It's probably the weakest. The real reason that you're willing to spend 7 points, because Lotus is a pointed card in this format, and why you also run Lion's Eye Diamond, is really because you also have Auriok Salvagers. Auriok Salvagers is another means, outside of the Rings of Brighthearth loops that I kind of hastily went through, is a means of generating infinite mana. So if you have a Black Lotus and you have a or a Lion's Eye Diamond with Auriok Salvagers, and you have access to 2 mana, to 1 colorless mana and 1 white, you can generate infinite mana of all the colors. You can generate infinite mana of any color you want, except for colorless widgets. So you're not going to be able to cast your your Thought-Knot Seer or your Reality Smasher off of this mana, but basically anything else in the game you can cast. That's it. If you have Lion's Eye Diamond, you're obviously putting cards in the yard. Does that matter? In this deck, generally not, because if you have a card like Chromatic Sphere, you can basically just use the RX Salvagers to continually return the Lion's Eye Diamond to make infinite mana, and then use one of these spell bombs or one of these spheres or stars, these eggs, to draw your entire deck. And if you generate infinite mana and then draw your whole deck, you can play all of the cards in your deck, or you can draw a Walking Ballista and just shoot them to death. Doesn't really matter. But, basically, you run these cards because having access to them allows you to generate infinite mana with RX Salvagers. Also, both of these cards right here are 0 mana artifacts, which means that with eggs and having a Scrap Trawler in play, you can generate a lot of mana during value lines when you're sacrificing eggs. So you sacrifice an egg, get back a Black Lotus if the Trawler's in play, sacrifice the Lotus, make mana, sack another egg, get the Lotus back, make more mana, and you're drawing cards while all this is happening, so ideally you're generating additional options to either go infinite or find a way to win with what you have access to at that point in time. Going to the next pile, you have the Tutor Effects. So these are all effects that allow you to find other things in the deck. Tezzeret the Seeker, 5 mana, basically find any 4 CMC artifact or less, or untap 2 artifacts. Both abilities are relevant. I think, beaten someone to death with just 5/5s. It's not generally the case that you want to do that. Generally, you can do more powerful things by finding different artifacts in the deck, because this is an artifact combo deck. But the fact that it can find 4 mana or less artifacts is very, very powerful. Typically speaking, I think the things I have found the most often are Rings of Brighthearth to go infinite, and I found Aetherflux Reservoir, I want to say. Or maybe, no, I found Thopter too. Thopter Foundry as well. Or Sword. And the most common ones that I go after are probably Aetherflux Reservoir, just a way to win the game. I've done Expo Map maybe once. Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek, one of the 2 pieces was I've done before as well, and then Rings of Brighthearth. Rings of Brighthearth generally tends to be the go-to for me, just because I think once you have access to Rings of Brighthearth, a lot of the effects this deck has going on just get exacerbated by a large amount. So yeah, Tezzeret, just very, very powerful. Finds any 4 CMC artifact or less in the deck if he sacrifices himself, and or you can just untap some stuff and make more mana. Fabricate finds basically 90% of the deck. Not really, but it finds a lot of the deck. It finds any artifact in the deck. Very good. Trinket Mage, means of getting after Black Lotus or Lion's Eye Diamond. Sometimes it finds Zuran Orb. The most common things you find with it are generally Zuran Orb, Black Lotus, Lion's Eye Diamond, and sometimes Welding Jar if you want to protect something. And also, Candelabra. Candelabra is an important one, so is Voltaic Key. It finds a lot of important pieces in the deck. Reshape. Yep, this can turn mana into any artifact and another artifact into any other artifact that you desire in the deck, which is a very powerful effect, especially when you're running a lot of cards that don't really, their relevance kind of wanes as you progress in the game. More of Invention. Yep, this deck makes a lot of blue mana, it makes a lot of mana period, so being able to, at instant speed, find any artifact in your deck for X plus 3 blue with Improvise is very, very good. Transmute Artifact, the older version of Reshape, and actually I think in a lot of ways a better card, because Reshape has an additional cost to cast the spell, Transmute does not. But if Transmute resolves, you sacrifice an artifact. If you do, search your library for an artifact card, and then pay X, where X is that card's mana cost, the surplus of that card's mana cost on top of whatever you sacrificed. Wargate, this typically speaking is going to find Tolarian Academy, but I've used it to find like Zuran Orbs and Black Lotuses and Candelabras of Tanos as well. Very powerful effect for Bant and X. Typically speaking, you're going to pay Bant with nothing because the most common card you'll find with this is Tolarian Academy, and it puts it right onto the battlefield, which is great. Sylvan Scrying, yep, generally going to find Tolarian Academy. Crop Rotation, generally a Tolarian Academy. I guess another thing I should note with these cards find either Tolarian Academy or they find Inventor's Fair. Inventor's Fair basically converts the land tutors into an artifact tutor, which generally speaking is going to mean you find a game win. Expedition Map, same story. Tolarian Academy or Inventor's Fair. Every once in a while you use these cards as well to find cards like Deserted Temple or Minamo, so that you can untap Tolarian Academy because mana may be your constraint, not the actual win conditions or cards that you need to win. Teleria West, also very powerful, transmutes into a 0 CMC card, which includes lands, so you can find Tolarian Academy with this, you can find Inventor's Fair, you can find Zuran Orb, Lotus, any 0 mana artifact is findable with Teleria West. Another cool thing to kind of note on some of these cards here is they also they also combine with Rings of Brightheart. So Tezzeret finding a 4 CMC or less artifact, if you pay 2 additional on top of activating Tezzeret, you can find 2 of those things. Trinket Mage, this is triggered or activated, right? I have to recheck, now I'm going to second guess myself. No, so it doesn't work with Trinket Mage, but it works with Tezzeret. With Expedition Map and Inventor's Fair and Teleria West, and all of the fetch lands, you can pay 2 additional to either fetch for 2 different lands that you want to put into play, or transmute for 2 different 0 CMC cards, or find 2 artifacts in your deck for the price of 4+2 on Inventor's Fair. Those are also combinations with the Rings of Brightheart that are very, very powerful in this deck. The next pile you have here is kind of your card draw and selection. I have Brainstorm here. Brainstorm is a very powerful card, and as you can see with many combo decks, you're going to have some cards that are just not really up to snuff or not what you need to be doing at that point in time. And being able to shuffle them away with a shuffle effect, which we have 20 tutors in the deck, that's including the fetch lands, is a significant number. So being able to get rid of cards that are not relevant at a given point in time in the game is very powerful, and being able to find hopefully relevant ones is good. The rest of these cards are just all draw 7s. So you have Time Twister, Wheel of Fortune, Paradoxical Outcome. I wouldn't quite call a draw 7, but it's pretty much a draw 7 in this deck. It's one-sided, which is powerful. Memory Jar, again, this is a two-sided draw 7, but it's a draw 7 artifact, which means it's tutorable off of all of our artifact tutors, with the exception of like Tezzeret possibly. Time Spiral, very, very powerful with Academy itself, because you get to find 7 new cards, and you get to untap your Academy and all of your lands. Echo of Aeons, this card's very sick. This is a flashbackable Time Twister. They cost 6, but typically speaking, you're not paying the 6. What you're doing is you're ditching the card with Lion's Eye Diamond and recasting it. And it's come up numerous times for me where I've actually just had an opening hand that had a lot of fast mana. Didn't really do anything, but had a lot of fast mana. And I was on a play, and I would just play out the Lion's Eye Diamond, play on all my fast mana, sack the Lion's Eye Diamond, ditching like another card plus Echo of Aeons, and just cast Echo of Aeons to muck up my opponent's hand, give them a new 7 that they didn't get to choose, and then just pass the turn to them, and then, win the next couple turns. Very, very powerful card, very powerful with Lion's Eye Diamond. Next pile here is the Recursion pile, so kind of, as is probably familiar with folks who played Eggs on their formats, you have your Face Reward, your Second Sunrise. There are more effects like this. Like, I think there's a 6 mana one, like From the Vaults or something, like, or From the Vault or something like that. It's too much mana. These 2 are just great. You get everything back. So any artifact, creature, enchantment, land cards that are put in the graveyard in the battlefield this turn, you get back. So, you used up all your mana from your Tolarian Academy, you sack it to a Zern Orb, you blow up all your eggs, and you basically end it looks like you're going to end the turn with nothing on board. Then you cast a Face Reward, floating mana, you get everything back, and draw like 6 to 7 new cards, and then just basically win the game. Very, very powerful, and kind of like the core, the backbone of how this engine or this deck works. One of the components that allows you to get more cards, and kind of get through your cards to what's relevant in that point in time. Codex Shredder already kind of talked through some of the combos this card has with like Rings of Brightheart. It also just buys back a relevant card that you may need. I mean, if you're in a more grindy matchup, sometimes you'll just get back, a Tolarian Academy if it gets like Strip Mined or Wastelanded or something like that, so you can just have that capability. I don't think it's beyond reason that you may get back like a Chain of Vapor or a Peel if someone like lands a Blood Moon and you just aren't quite able to go off, but you want to have the answer to it, so you get one of these cards. Scrap Trawler, kind of already explained how this card works. Generally speaking, it's going to combine out with Lotus and LED in the deck to generate a large amount of mana. However, there are still 2 CMC cards in the deck, so like sometimes you'll sack Alchemist Vial and just get back an egg so you can get a little deeper in the deck and draw a little more. Buried Ruin, this is also another utility land that actually also works with Rings of Brightheart. So produces a colorless widget. You tap 2, tap this, sacrifice it. Return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. So if you have Rings of Brightheart, you can do this twice. You can basically do it twice for 4 mana plus tapping this card and sacking it. Very, very powerful in this style of deck. It's going to be kind of running through cards quickly, and it's going to sometimes, possibly have components disrupted that it's going to need to actually win. So it gives you the ability to get them back. The next pile I have here is kind of the win con pile. I don't even know if like Auriac Salvagers is technically a win con. It kind of is. It's really not. Auriac Salvagers is really mana. It combines that with Lotus and LED here. That's really kind of one of the big combos with it in the deck. like I said, this does make infinite mana. I'm not going to call it a win con. I'll just call it mana. You're going to win with something else. But Auriok Salvager is going to be a card that can generate an infinite loop to generate infinite mana of all colors, which, typically speaking, if you have an egg, means that you draw your whole deck and win the game. These are all the win cons. So you have a Walking Ballista, which is kind of like one of the go-to win cons. You generate a loop that generates infinite mana and then make an infinite Walking Ballista and shoot them for infinite and win the game. Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek make infinite 1/1s with flying. One of them will be a 2/3 and gain infinite life. That's pretty hard to beat for some decks. Saheeli actually can win the game. She's kind of in here as just kind of not an engine card, but like a value card. Saheeli makes 1/1s every time you cast a non-creature spell, creates a 1/1 servo. This obviously combines out really powerfully with Cart Clan Ironworks because you can cast an egg out for 1 mana and basically have a 1/1 that, at that point in time becomes 2 mana. So you basically make mana off some of the spells you cast. She also works well in combination with cards like Sai, where you can sack the tokens that you make off casting your spells to turn into more cards. If you combine any of these together, then you have basically an engine for mana plus cards, which is very, very powerful. Aetherflux Reservoir, you're going to be going through a lot of cards, casting a lot of spells. A lot of them are very cheap. A lot of them replace themselves and make mana in the process of doing so. So your card velocity is going to can be very high. So if you have an Aetherflux Reservoir in play, it is not very hard in the course of one turn, even from a very low card count hand, to kill someone just outright. And even if you don't, this card kind of can almost fall over into Disruption, because I've definitely used it against more aggressive decks to gain 7 to 8 life, maybe 10 life on a turn, and then they couldn't kill me, and then on the following turn I just killed them. Urza High Lord, this card can win the game. It's kind of also really more so, this card kind of does it all, right? This is a threat. It can actually beat someone to death. That 0/0 construct artifact creature that gets +1/+1 for each artifact creature or artifact you control is going to be massive. It's probably going to be like a 17/17 or a 20/20 or something like that. So that can just hit them and kill them. Generally speaking, it's not going to. The real operative parts of this is the fact that you can tap any untapped artifact you control to add blue, which means this is a mana engine. Generally speaking, you pay for it to put Urza into play, and then you make about 20 mana with Urza. So he kind of nets mana for you in a deck like this. Why is that relevant? Well, he also is a card engine on a stick, because you can pay 5 mana, shuffle your library, and then exile your top card until the end of a turn. You may play that card without playing its mana cost. So if you're able to generate any one of the infinite mana loops that we were kind of talking about, you can just use Urza to basically play your whole deck. Not that it's per se a challenge to really get that going, but just having another piece that does that all on its own, it kind of does everything the deck wants to be doing. It's just very powerful, and that's kind of I saw this card and I was like, I kind of want to try this out because this card is just sweet. It does everything that this deck wants to do. It makes the mana, it makes cards, and it randomly can just beat someone to death if you need to. This last pile here, kind of the one I jumped back over to in my roundabout way of covering this deck, is the eggs pile. I'm going to consider Sensei's Divining Top an egg. It's really not quite an egg. It could go into a couple different piles. Go into the card selection pile, but it replaces itself. It can replace itself if you flip it and put it back on top. The rest of these are just kind of artifacts that have really small incremental effects, some of which can be relevant in the course of games. In general, just make mana, and upon sacrificing them, draw a card. That is kind of the most relevant part to what is an egg. Yeah, guys, so that is this build of eggs. Like I said, this is not a deck that I designed from the ground up. I definitely stole Benjamin Wheeler's list. He's kind of the grandfather, the father of this deck list. I'm not going to say this is the list that he is currently playing. I don't know that for a fact, but I assume it's relatively close, as the core of these decks tends to not change all that much. But I'm going to go ahead and go on a quick pause, and I'm going to jump into some gameplay with this eggs deck. I had a really great time playing it. I really had a good time learning, just kind of all of the different interactions that are in the deck, because the way this deck's built, it has just a vast amount of different cool interdeck synergies that you can really tell someone put a lot of time and love into designing. I have a lot of appreciation for the work that went into it, because it's really a gorgeous deck. Anyways, guys, I'm going to go on a quick pause, and I'll be back momentarily for more gameplay, or with some gameplay of eggs in the 100-card singleton Canadian Highlander format. Hey guys, Lemon02 back here. I'm playing as Magic Stronghold, which is Jordan Wu of Cardboard of Magic Stronghold. in Vancouver. So, anyways, I'm playing against Jordan here. I've mulliganed my first hand, and this is the hand that I look at for my 6. I think this is an acceptable 6. I believe I'm going to go ahead and put away the artifact land. I don't know what Jordan's on here, but it appears some sort of blue deck, which, I don't think, blue is that horrible of a matchup for eggs, because I think it depends on the pilot. Right, you have a lot of ways to kind of build your hand size up, though, because you can put your cards from your hand onto the board. You're not limited by having 7 cards in hand, so if they don't pressure you, you tend to be able to kind of just do what I'm doing right now, which is just build up on-board cards. I'm also able to pressure my opponent's graveyard with Phyrexian Furnace, and I've got this Lotus Bloom in the Exile Zone, which is just fine. I play out the Elsewhere Flash to draw a new card. I'm kind of just looking for my other land. Kind of lamenting that I put a land on bottom, but I think it was right to put the land on bottom. Trinket Mage is cool because it gives me access to map, gives me access to Lotus if I want it. Just go ahead and cast an Inker Wellspring out. My opponent's doing nothing, which means to me they probably have counter magic in hand. I start finally gaining life off the Inventor's Fair. I guess not finally. Its first turn has been in play. Lotus Bloom comes out of exile, so I have up to 6 mana this turn. I go ahead and cast the Trinket Mage out. They don't respond to that. Go ahead and find the Expedition map to get access to my Tolarian Academy. Crack the Expedition map to get the Academy. And they have Nimble Obstructionist here, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, and they stifle this activated ability. I go ahead and exile the card from their yard. Give them a cheeky Phyrexian Furnace activation. To keep them off of any delve spells. They chain lightning my 2/2, which is fine. It's not really relevant. Faith Reward's kind of an interesting one. I go ahead and play out an egg here, sacrifice or get the card out of their yard with Phyrexian Furnace, play out the Alchemist Vial, draw another card. I'm kind of trying to set up a Faith Reward. What I'd like to do is Faith Reward on their EOT, see if I can get them to counter the Faith Reward on EOT, and then go for Memory Jar or some other combo on my turn. Basically, fight them on mana on their EOT into my main. Is kind of my game plan. So I just go ahead and pop this thing now. Find a Transmute. Go ahead and cast Fabricate. This is going to eat a counter spell, and it does, which is fine. I go ahead and get the Mana Leak out of the yard. The thing is now I have a decent number. I mean, Sword of the Meek's not that powerful. It's powerful with another card, but I have a lot of powerful cards in hand outside of the Sword of the Meek. So now what I'm going to opt to do is actually pass it to them. If they're not going to do anything, then they're kind of wasting their turns too. Basically, they're looking to just make land drops, but eventually they're going to run out of counters. I allow the Magus of the Moon to actually happen here, so they have 2 blue mana plus a mountain in play. I go ahead and start sacking these cards on board to build up my hand size, so I can have a big turn next turn, or I can get them to counter this Faith Reward. This Faith Reward is kind of a bait spell. It's only going to draw me 2 additional, or get me back 2 cards here, so it's not very good. But they go ahead and counter it, which I think that's. And I'm not trying to knock Jordan's playstyle. I think it's just an aspect of not understanding or not knowing how this deck works. It was definitely worth it to give me the 2 cards back. Basically the divination off of that card. Instead, they go ahead and counter it, and here they kind of get into a world of trouble. I could probably play out a Memory Jar or something like that, but I think this is just fine against blue-red. Now I've got the Thopter Foundry plus the Sword of the Meek, and they're stuck on 2 blue mana. They have an Ancestral Vision in exile, but they only have 3 blue mana, and I'm able to make, slowly grind them out with tokens here, which is just fine, I think. I don't think you have to play this deck fast. I think it can go very fast, but I don't think you need to. So cast Cryptic Command here, but they've tapped themselves out of blue mana. I just go ahead and let this happen. I think in retrospect I should have just continued making Thopters. I guess I couldn't there because the sword was in exile. I just go ahead and replay the Thopter Foundry because they've tapped themselves out of blue, and this is kind of where their plan falls apart. They have Magus in play, but the Magus really is kind of hurting them just as much as it's hurting me. Actually, it's really not hurting me at all at this point because I can fix my artifacts. So I cast an Inferno Titan out, which is going to kill, some number of my Thopters. And it's actually a good clock, but this also means they've tapped out, so I actually have the win. I can try to go for a win next turn, which I'm going to opt to do. With them tapped out and not having countered the return of the Thopter Foundry with something along the lines of Pact of Negation, Pact of Negation, Force of Will, or Force of Negation, I don't think they have it. So they tap out for their Inferno Titan, and now it's time to go for it. I draw to Crop Rotation, which means that I kind of want to get after Academy. So what I'm doing here is playing out the Walking Ballista for 2. Kill their Magus because I'd like to actually have Academy do something. Kill one of my lands to make a Tolarian Academy, making 11 mana, playing out the Guild Globe to find a Welding Jar, playing on a Welding Jar, tapping all of my artifacts to make mana and do whatever they do, using the Paradoxical Outcome to draw a bazillion cards. That's not how much I drew, but I drew a lot. I play a bunch of stuff out, but I kind of miss. I don't really hit what I wanted to hit. Not quite enough, so that's fine. I've gone up a lot on cards. They don't really have a win next turn, because I gained a lot of life off of the Thopter Foundry. I make a mistake here, though. I didn't discard the Sword of the Meek, which I should have. But I draw into Black Lotus here, which is probably going to be enough to just get them. So I gain a life off of the Inventor's Fair. Cast out the Lotus. They negate the Lotus, which I'm like, oh, okay. I guess that's fine. I don't think it really matters here. I cast out the Tezzeret. I use Tezzeret to get Rings of Brighthearth. Start sacking off my eggs to draw into more cards. Find a Minamo, which means that I have now infinite mana. Cast out this Elsewhere Flask because I want to make more mana off of my stuff. Use Rings of Brighthearth with Minamo to untap both Minamo and Tolarian Academy, which is an infinite mana loop. So now I have infinite mana, and I have numerous tutors, and they are on very little mana. I get out the Scrap Heap Trawler so I can start getting Lotus back, and they go ahead and concede. So there are numerous ways I could kill them here. Actually, I have an onboard win, I think. Let me check my yard real fast. There are numerous ways I could kill them here, but the easiest way is to just sack Inventor's Fair to go find Codex Shredder. Put Codex Shredder into play, pay 5 mana off Codex Shredder plus Rings of Brighthearth to get back the Walking Ballista, or and the Codex Shredder itself, and then I could just get back. I could draw my whole deck, but I could just kill them this turn, right? Is basically the thing. If I have infinite mana, I can kill them. I have numerous ways to tutor here. Yeah, and that's just that's what this deck does. Makes infinite mana and then kills them with a Walking Ballista or with infinite tokens, whatever. Doesn't really tend to matter how you do it. There's quite a few ways, but you kind of get to see a showcase version of how it works right here. Make infinite mana, and there's a possibility I possibly could have won earlier. I will say this: this deck is fairly sophisticated, and I think rewards practice with it to a higher extent. I still think there may have been a way I possibly could have won on the Paradoxical Outcome turn. I'm not positive on that. I did consider through it, but because I was down to 11 minutes on clock and we were playing on tournament under tournament practice, we only had a 25-minute clock, so I did just opt to go with the easy mode line, which is this line right here. Now, that said, I think you could probably go for a Paradoxical Outcome line where I use the cards that I got to win there. That said, I will automatically tell you, I just totally misplayed in not ditching the sword. The sword I definitely should have ditched. Even though I didn't have access to mana on their turn, it made sure that a play like Vendilion Click or Force of Negation didn't just blow me out. But that all said, with where we were at and how far ahead we were on cards, I don't think it mattered all that much. But like I said, when you start getting down to 11 minutes and you're in game one, and you're on a deck that's not very fast, notoriously, or can be quick, but it generally is very click intensive, it can tend to lead to some play errors. And I think here we could have played this one a little better. I don't know if it would have increased our expected win turn. I'm still not sure on that Paradoxical Outcome. I have to look through it really heavily, but I don't think I had to win that turn. I think I just kind of missed a little bit too much on it. But anyways, this is a definite win here. We can draw our whole deck. We can play infinite Walking Ballistas, you name it. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll come back for Game 2 against Magic Stronghold on Blue Moon versus Eggs. Alrighty, guys, back. This hand's acceptable. So the reason this hand's interesting to me, why I want to keep this, one, I haven't played a ton with this deck, so I tend to, as a player, enjoy keeping hands that appear more speculative, because I think in general they allow you to learn more about the deck. This hand, all that said, this hand's not that speculative. The reason this hand's a keep, I think, is because it can play 2 very cheap artifacts. It's going to have access to double blue mana, and it can transmute the Teleria West into a Lion's Eye Diamond, I think as early as turn 2 or 3, and then after discarding the hand, recast Echo of Aeons, with basically 2 draws on board. Opponent plays out Sulphur Falls, which means to me they probably don't have a moon draw in hand, or at least they didn't keep based on a moon draw. And they likely have a 2-mana card they want to cast, and possibly that card is trapped. Assumption is they probably drew that land for the turn. Get lucky here and find a Mox Diamond, which is kind of nice. Just play out 2 additional eggs. I want to maximize as many of the cards out of this hand as I can before I actually use this effect. My opponent Arc Lightnings me on their main phase. I guess it's a sorcery, so it has to be done, and it's just a card they don't want to, it's basically a card that can be stranded in this matchup because it's not going to kill creatures, probably. Transmute the Teleria West, find the Lion's Eye Diamond, sack the Lion's Eye Diamond, flashback the Echo of Aeons, get this gross-looking hand right here, which is a very good hand. Unfortunately, it's not going to quite make it, so I could transmute Artifact on one of these 1-drops or 0-drops to get a Black Lotus, but that's not going to allow me to cast out the Cart Clan Ironworks and, get the Aetherflux Reservoir on board. I'm a mana short, basically. Opponent, Vendilion Cliques on their turn, takes away the Cart Clan Ironworks, which is fine by me. I think with Cart Clan Ironworks and Aetherflux Reservoir, either one is pretty threatening. I go ahead and exile the Black Lotus, not the Black Lotus, the Lotus Bloom, because I don't want to have it in deck. They cast a Bolt, hitting my face. I'm okay with that. Go ahead and cast down a 1-mana card here to get back up to 14. Go ahead and cycle off this card to just get a little deeper in my deck. Find a Taiga, not a great pull there. They're incentivized to try to kill me as fast as they can. I wanted to kind of get up to basically a point where it was going to be very difficult for them to flip Thing in the Ice and do 7 plus 7 more to me. But the way they were playing the game, they were playing like they were trying to burn me out real quick. Play out a Zerun Orb, which is a very problematic card. They cast Pact of Negation, which is going to tap them on the following turn, but means they're still free to interact this turn. I go ahead and sack a Sky Cloud Egg, play out a Thopter Foundry, gaining some more life, back up to 14, and just pass the turn to them. Then, actually, I don't. I actually decide to actually go for a Transmute Artifact here to see if I can get more counter magic out of their hand. I possibly should have just waited on this. They go ahead and Logic Knot, flipping the Thing in the Ice, putting the Vendilion Clique back in hand. They do counter this spell. I can't pay for it. But next turn, I'm going to be at 17 life, which is going to be very hard for them to kill, because they have to tap out this turn. And I have a Memory Jar for the following turn, and I do not have to make a land drop pre-Memory Jar, which means I have access to Academy on the next turn. They play a tap land out. Hit me for 7 down to 10. Lotus Bloom still in exile. The reason I exiled that as opposed to leaving it in hand is because if I drew into a draw 7, I didn't want to be in a place where I could draw that card again. That's really the only reason why. I just didn't want to draw it again. So I start going ham here. I'm drawing all the cards, playing out Candelabra of Thanos, untapping Ancient Tomb, getting a Lion's Eye Diamond, making a bunch of mana, sacking it, using the mana to sack the sword to gain some more life. And they're in a lot of trouble here. I go ahead and get back Terrarian and Misty Rainforest. Just go ahead and block with a Thopter here. Didn't quite get a hand that could go totally ham there. Get a trigger off of the Lotus Bloom. They, I believe, go ahead and Vendilion Clique me. No, they Vendilion Clique targeting themselves, trying to find a counterspell. Because I think at this point it really doesn't matter if I take a card. If I get a spell, it's good. Basically, so I go for a Teleria West here. Find Telerian Academy. Cast out the Terrarian. I think, no, the Zerun Orb's in the yard, so the Zerun Orb would have been probably the go-to because I could just gain up to 50 very easily. Cast out a Sunbeam Spellbomb. I believe they do something here. They condescend the Sunbeam Spellbomb. I pay for it. They get to scry. Sack it to draw, actually. Gaining life there wouldn't have quite put me... I guess I could have used the mana from the Thopter Foundry. I could have used the life gain from the Thopter Foundry to actually use the Aetherflux Reservoir. I'm just trying to go off with eggs right now. So I have a bunch of mana. I start making Thopters. I'm at 53. I bolt them for a bunch for 50, down to negative 32, and Aetherflux Reservoir ends up winning this one. So game 1, we didn't get to see the actual kill, but it would have been a Walking Ballista, an infinite Walking Ballista kill. In this game, you get to see Aetherflux Reservoir kind of do the finishing touch in combination with Thopter Foundry. Which at this point is not infinite, but is a lot. It's like, 20 1/1 flyers, plus Aetherflux for a 50 ball to the face. So, quick pause, guys. We'll be back momentarily for more gameplay with Eggs. This has been Eggs versus Jordan's variant of Blue Red Moon. Alright, guys, back. This is, unfortunately, again, a mulligan to 6. This hand right here, likely going to put back the Mind Stone, be my guess, but we'll see. We'll see what I end up doing. I put back the egg. The egg's fine too. We're playing against what appears to be medium red, but we're probably in a bad spot here. Unfortunately, turn 1 Blood Moon is a way to bring many a deck low, including this deck. This deck can fix mana with eggs, but it looks like we're actually against prison. So opponent has on a chalice, set at 1, which is really bad because most of my eggs cost 1. Kaleidoscope can fix my mana, so I play it out to see what I can draw into. It's Chain of Vapor, but Chain of Vapor is turned off due to Chalice of the Void. So I need Repeal to deal with Chalice of the Void. So basically the name of my game plan here is to find a way, Repeal, to get rid of Chalice of the Void, and then use the Chain of Vapor to bounce the Blood Moon. I see a bunch of cards on top. None of them are really spectacular. But at a minimum, I still have the Lion's Eye Diamond, so I can generate mana and use the Sensei's Dividing Top as a draw to jump into a castable spell. Which in this case, the Static Orb comes out. This is really bad because I don't have a ton of permanents yet, but I am at some point going to have a lot of permanents that I don't want to not untap each turn. So I'm in a really rough spot here. I'm playing against basically Big Red Prison. They get a win con down, which is not good. I actually think they probably should have just gone for a token there, try to beat me to death, because they've definitely got onboard advantage. And the only way that realistically I probably win this is if Mana Crypt kills them. I go ahead and discard my whole hand. After getting a draw trigger off the Alchemist Vial, use the Paradoxical Outcome to draw a whole new hand of 7. But I look at it and I'm like, how do I realistically win this? Like, the Darkwater Egg, which makes me relevant mana, is not castable due to Chalice of the Void. I have a couple of stones that, can help make mana for me and draw me more cards, but I'm probably dead here. I'm just going to pack it in and go to game 2 and hope to fade a Mana Crypt into a Blood Moon on turn 1, so that hopefully I can get something going. But anyways, this has been Eggs versus basically Big Red Prison. And Big Red Prison definitely ate our lunch money, or took our lunch money in game number 1 of this match. All right, guys, back playing against Kill Dice here. So this hand is actually pretty strong. Like I think, one, it's strong because it just completely goozles my opponent's hand. What I can do here is play on Inventor's Fair, which is probably the card that I'm going to play out first. Get the Sunbeam Spellbomb in play, and then play out Lion's Eye Diamond, ditch my whole hand, and then recast Echo of the Aeons with Flashback. So it means I basically get to goozle my opponent's keep. They go down to 6, play out my Sunbeam Spellbomb, sack the LED, but Flashback the Lotus there. And, yep, this is my hand. It's not great. It's not bad either. They play out an Ancient Tomb into a Mana Vault into a Winter Orb. Pretty powerful opening, but definitely not as powerful as the first game we played. Auriok Salvagers is kind of cool. Unfortunately, I've gotten rid of my Lotus, my LED rather. So I cannot recurse that card over and over again because I shuffled it back into my deck. And Lotus Bloom is not a combo with Salvagers. So things are looking a little rough here. Like, they've got this card, this Winter Orb, to kind of hose me. I get the Black Lotus and play it out. A Braid is a thing, but what I'm kind of worried about is like just them playing a Trinisphere or playing a Trinisphere, playing like anything that's going to basically goozle my hand. They play a Storage Matrix, which is an awkward card. So if I recall correctly, this card breaks the game. I do have a game win here. Actually, correction, I don't have a game win this turn, but if I draw a land, I believe I have a game win. No, I'm a mana short. So what the combination is here, and they can't use their Welder yet, I don't believe. I don't have an artifact in the yard. So what the combo is here is if I get access to basically 2 additional mana plus Auriok Salvager's casting cost, I can make infinite mana. With a Sunbeam Spellbomb, with access to a Sunbeam Spellbomb, I can draw my whole deck, which means I can win. The problem with Storage Matrix is, with Winter Orb in play at the same time, is that you cannot choose land. So basically, I could not choose anything. Like, what ended up happening with this card, and this is just for folks who may end up playing Big Red Prison or a card that plays Storage Matrix plus Winter Orb in it, like some sort of prison deck, it breaks the game. So if you have both these cards in play at the same time, you can choose any option you want on Storage Matrix, but regardless of the option you choose, it'll go to the next option and force you to choose it again, or choose a different option. And it'll keep on going ad nauseum, so you'll continue to choose options, and nothing will ever happen. It won't progress, your clock will run out, which is bugged. So anyways, Storage Matrix unfortunately broke this game. I showed my opponent the hand. I was like, hey, I don't know what you have in hand, but maybe you can beat this, but it's not probably likely. If I get to untap twice, I probably win. So we ended up going to game 3 here to get to play the game out. Unfortunately, this one broke, so you don't get to kind of see the finish. But like I said, what the idea was is to get to mana to use Lotus to cast Auriok Salvagers, and then use a floating white 1 to recurse the Lotus infinite times, make infinite mana, draw infinite card. Well, draw the rest of my deck that I need to with the Spellbomb to get to a Whatever. It could be anything. It could just be this Urza, if I wanted it to be. So anyways, guys, quick pause. Be back momentarily for game number 3 against Big Red Prison with eggs. Alrighty, guys, I'm back for game number 3 against Big Red Prison. So this hand's great. Well, that's not great, but it's fine. Yep, I don't know why, but they played out a Mox Diamond there. I think it was an accidental click. Play on a Life Spark Spellbomb. You're going to kind of see one of the benefits to playing a deck like this. Life Spark Spellbomb actually has relevant text on it. I play on all these lands in this Lion's Eye Diamond. They play out a Trinosphere, which is a spooky card, because that card does kind of hose what I'm up to. I go ahead and activate the Life Spark Spellbomb, take 2 off of the Harsh Mentor, block the Harsh Mentor with a 3/3 Minamo, because Life Spark Element or Life Spark Bomb turns a land into a 3/3. They play out an Ensnaring Bridge. The card's not relevant here. Doesn't have words on it against my deck. I mean, it kind of does, but I'm not going to attack them to win this game. They play on a Goblin Engineer, bury a Soul Ring from their deck in there. I get a fetch land. Getting rid of the Harsh Mentor was a really big play. It was kind of a big oops on the opponent's part. I just get out the Skycloud Egg, tapping the Basalt Monolith. One of the other things I could have considered is saving the Basalt Monolith mana to go at, with War Invention, go after the Rings of Brighthearth, and that may have actually been a better play in retrospect. Yeah, I think I like that line better. I think instead of casting the Skycloud out, I should have just left the Basalt Monolith open. I'm going to go for a 1 here, find the Expedition map, draw an Urza for the turn, sack Expedition map to find Tolarian Academy, tap a Tolarian Academy, untap Tolarian Academy, make a little bit of mana, cast down Urza, get a big thing, which blocks. And now I actually opt to kind of go for it. I opt to get a sword down. I want to build up my mana resources, and right now, if I get more artifacts out, it means I build more equity inside Tolarian Academy, which tends to be good. So I cast out the Chromatic Star here, cast out the Defense Grid, untap the Tolarian Academy. I'm making a lot of mana, but you have to remember all of these spells cost 3 mana at a minimum. So basically, nothing gets out of the sphere. I do go ahead and draw 7 here, cast down a Saheeli, which is kind of cool because it's going to allow me to generate a mana engine. The problem is it's still not going to be good enough to kind of play around the Trinosphere. I'm still losing a little bit of mana every time I do this. Keep in mind, if without a Trinosphere, I'd probably just be just demolishing this game. But Trinosphere is kind of holding me back because each of these spells that even though they have 1 CMC, cost 3 with a sphere in play. That said, I'm kind of rebating them because I'm making servos, which then tap for a blue, and then I'm reusing the cards themselves to tap for a blue. And then what I'm trying to do is get this Time Spiral off. The idea is this will give me an untap on the Tolarian Academy. It also leaves a white mana floating, which means that I can set up for a second Sunrise play, which is one of the cards I draw here. So I cast out the Lion's Eye Diamond again, which I redrew that card, which is kind of cool. Go ahead and cast down a Sensei's Dividing Top. I'm going to go ahead and take a look here because I would like to get rid of the Trinosphere. With the Trinosphere out of play, I'm going to be in a much better position to just go infinite here. Because right now, that 3 is kind of holding me up. And I find one of the answers. I find Chain of Vapor. So go ahead and draw into Chain of Vapor. Cast Chain of Vapor, generating another servo. Get rid of the thing. What do they bounce here? Urza. They rebounce Urza, which I think is fine because now Urza just costs 4. I guess Urza only cost 4 before. Lion's Eye Diamond, for folks who are not familiar, is not a tap ability. You can actually just activate this without tapping it. Unlike Black Lotus, which is a tap ability. So I can just tap it there, and it's kind of it's free. Replay the Sensei's Dividing Top. I have 1 white and a bunch of floating blue mana. A bunch of artifacts on top. I just opt to draw into these to continue to make more servo tokens. Basically, these are free draws because it costs 1 to play the Dark Water Egg, but I make a servo every time I cast a 1 mana spell, and then I can tap the servo for a blue mana. So basically, they're free. So I'm just cycling off all this nonsense here to just generate a bunch of mana and cards. And if it were a Storm deck, a Storm count. There's Faith Reward. Go ahead and draw the Trinket Mage here. And let's see if the game keeps going. I believe just find Black Lotus because I would like to set up a second Sunrise. Go ahead and return the egg from the graveyard. Still trying to set up second Sunrise, just a really big one. Play out the Lotus here. Draw into, I believe, top again. No, Fabricate. Fabricate. Find, I believe, Zurin Orb. Nope, Cart Clan Ironworks. Cart Clan Ironworks makes sense because this is near infinite mana, and I have a Walking Ballista in hand. It's not infinite mana, but it's a lot. I'm just kind of going through because I want to play the deck and just kind of like learn all the interactions. Any life gain here is going to bring back the sword, which is going to allow me to make 2 mana off it with Cart Clan Ironworks. And yeah, as you can see, this is fairly busted. I'm just making a bunch of mana, and I cast a Second Sunrise, get all of this bullshit back. Yeah, resack the sword so I can get the sword back again, which generates, I guess, 2 more mana. Get all of this crap back. You may say, yeah, why did you discard your Walking Ballista? Walking Ballista doesn't matter because I have access to the Codex Shredder, which Codex Shredder is going to allow me to get back Walking Ballista and or get back Second Sunrise so I can just keep going. So I have an infinite loop that involves Second Sunrise plus Codex Shredder right now. Regardless of that, I can just get back the Walking Ballista, and with like a trillion mana in my pool, I can cast an infinite Walking Ballista and win the game, which is what I do here. So pretty interesting matchup against Mono Red Prison, like Big Red Prison. The game 1 we kind of got just beat up by a Blood Moon, and I think we had a high propensity to get beat up by a lot of the hate cards they have access to. Some of them are just irrelevant. So like if they have a draw that has a Snaring Bridge and Smoke, those are not really that spooky for us. The draws that are spooky are the ones that have like Trinisphere, Sphere of Resistance, Chalice of the Void. Not a card that I see in this format a lot, but it's very good against this deck if you know what to name. That all said, like I was kind of happy with how the deck ran because I was able to really play my way out of some of these more austere hate pieces that just like really should shut this deck down or seem like they would shut this deck down. And yeah, having access to just a couple interactive spells and just a lot of draw really allowed me to kind of, get after the answers that I needed to find a way out of the game state into a win, which you get to see here then in Game 2, despite the fact that the game broke due to the storage matrix. Anyways, guys, quick pause. I think I'm going to have one more game for you with eggs, and then I'm going to call it. Back momentarily. Alright guys, unfortunately this game is going to be kind of cut short because this was actually only one game in a match set, unfortunately. I think either I or my opponent had to leave. So this is an opening hand. It's an interesting one. I do think it's one that's worth keeping. It's a little bit speculative because it doesn't really have a good startup mana, but it has a lot of powerful tools going for it, to include the Thopter Sword combo. It also has access to Lion's Eye Diamond, which is a very powerful combo piece depending on what we can draw out of, and really all it needs to do is draw mana to win. So I think this is a very justifiable and keepable hand. Opponent plays out Jiraga Tree Speaker, which is very strong. Draw out a Wargate, which is going to allow me to get access to whatever 0 mana card I want. Well, really any permanent in my deck, but more than likely it's going to be finding an Academy. So I play out a Scrap Trawler here, which is a powerful card. They play out a Tireless Tracker, and don't appear to have like a big payoff for Rofellos. They're going to have a lot of cards, though. So they're using this Tireless Tracker as a draw engine combined with Rofellos and Jiraga Tree Speaker. Basically, I could beat that at any point in time because I have faith their deck's playing big things like Primeval Titan and like Crater of Behemoth. Land's a good draw here, so I've been drawing very well. I go ahead and just discard my hand with Lion's Eye Diamond to make some mana and start sacking stuff to basically make a bunch of mana with the Lion's Eye Diamond. So what I'm doing here is just making a bunch of mana to get some draw steps off of Scrap Trawler. So Scrap Trawler and Spellbomb plus the Lion's Eye Diamond allows me to continue to just generate a bunch of mana and make a bunch of Thopter tokens. My opponent goes ahead and packs it in here. This is a little bit obnoxious, but the problem here is that due to the fact that I have Lion's Eye Diamond plus the Spellbomb plus Sword, I'm able to actually use the... Alright, so let me go through this loop. This is actually kind of a convoluted loop. So I sacrifice the Spellbomb to draw a card and get back the Lion's Eye Diamond. If I can play the card, great, I can play the card. If I can't, whatever. But I sacrifice the Spellbomb and get back the Lotus. The other thing I'm doing with this loop is making mana, so every time I sacrifice the Sword, I can get back the Aether Spellbomb, which means that every time I get back the Aether Spellbomb, I'm generating 2 mana per loop until I find relevant cards. I do not have a land drop this turn, but that's not per se relevant, because eventually I'm going to find either a Codex Shredder, a Crop Rotation, a Codex Shredder to get back Wargate, or a Crop Rotation to turn one of my lands into a Sylvan Library, So I am making mana this way. Like I'm actually staying mana neutral, but eventually I'm going to get to a card that generates mana off of this loop that I'm doing, and I'm going to get to see my whole deck is kind of the trick. So Thopter plus Sword, Thopter Foundry plus Sword, plus Lion's Eye Diamond, plus Scrap Trawler, plus Egg actually is a mana neutral just card filter. So eventually I'm going to get to a card that's relevant. Some of them are going to be irrelevant, and I'm just going to use the LED. I'm going to continue to crack the LED, or in this case the Lotus. I don't even have to crack LED anymore, so I can just build up my hand size if I'd like. But eventually I'm going to find a non-land or more non-lands, and I'm going to cast them out, or I'm going to find Crop Rotation, which is kind of the card I want to make a lot of mana off of Academy, or I'm going to find Rings of Bright Hearth, which is going to allow me to double up on my triggers here and draw 2 cards per cycle, whilst making mana. So my opponent goes ahead and packs it in here to this. It would have taken me a long time to go through my deck. That is a given. But there is actually a loop here, and I am mana neutral on that loop, and I get to see my whole deck, which in this case is going to be a game win, because I'll eventually find the means to win inside of my deck, especially considering the fact that I found the Black Lotus pretty quickly, mind you, such that I don't have to use the LED anymore, and I'm just going to build up my hand size to basically be my library. At this point. So anyways, guys, unfortunately we didn't get to play game 2. I think Jackie had to go, or I had to go. Something came up. This is going to be the last game I cover with eggs. You got to see a couple loops in it. I really think if this is a deck that interests you, and I do think it's a very cool deck, check out Benjamin Wheeler's content. In no way affiliated with him. I don't make money off YouTube. I do this for fun. He's a Twitch partner, really good Canadian Highlander player, possibly the best. He's really the person who invented this deck, and he's got a lot of great videos, a lot of great VODs out there on this deck. After getting to firsthand kind of play it, and this is not the only gameplay I dug through the annals. I didn't find all of the games I played with it. I probably played about 15, 20 games with this deck. It's a really enjoyable experience to get to play the deck. I don't think it's the best density-based combo deck. I still think that kind of goes to Storm. That's not a deck I've actually covered yet, but I played a significant bit of. I think that's probably the best density combo deck in this format, but this is a really cool one, and it actually has some... It disrupts in a very interesting way. The distributed draw engine that kind of comes with is intrinsic to eggs itself. Allows for a lot of tricky and kind of technical play that I think allows the experienced pilot to really take advantage of. You have a lot of ways to draw at instant speed. You can amass card advantage on the drop of a dime pretty much whenever you want. And I think, there's a lot of cool strategic advantages that a deck like Eggs has over, like Storm. That all said, I don't think it's as powerful as Storm. And I think Standard Academy, given the fact that I believe it's an easier to play deck, may also just be more powerful. It's less tricksy. It's got, less, a little bit less play to it, I guess I would say. But, when that deck's popping, when Paradoxical Academy is popping, it's just very hard to lose a game with it. A lot of similar elements, but I think in general, just more powerful payoffs that you can slam down real early in the Paradoxical Academy deck. That all said, I do enjoy playing this style of deck a lot more than I do like an Academy deck, because Academy to me is just kind of like playing a big ramp deck with draw 7s, which is not to say that's a bad deck. It's actually a really good deck. I just don't enjoy the style of gameplay that it kind of offers. It doesn't really have as much going on as regards to decision making, and for me, I think a deck like this just tends to be a lot more fun because it played a decent bit of Magic, and for me, slamming big things down and just winning off of them is a thing. But I think in general, I get more value, more fun out of playing decks like this, like Eggs or like Storm, where there's a lot of little incremental decisions that kind of add up to either a win or a loss, and there's a lot of analysis in the gameplay, and it tends to be, for me, very fun because it's very decision intensive. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this primer on Eggs. I hope if it's a deck that interests you, you can either reach out to me. I can offer you some of my own insights on the deck, but I would definitely pursue looking at Canadian Highlander veteran Benjamin Wheeler's content on Eggs, because it's probably the best there is out there. The guy made the deck, so it's pretty good. Anyways, guys, enjoy and take care now.